Alright, we're talking about the rise of dictators before World War II. Three big characters come to mind. We have Adolf Hitler, Benito Mussolini, and Hideki Tojo in 1941. We'll talk about that in a second. First, we're going to start off with Adolf Hitler. Hitler wants to ignore the Treaty of Versailles. After World War I, Germany is ordered to pay the equivalent in today's money of $784 billion to France and Great Britain. Later on, that total will be adjusted, but that's a heavy-hitting debt. And also, they're told not to have a military of any kind of strength. In 1933, Hitler takes power and he begins making his changes. He stops reparations payments to France and Great Britain. They've crippled the German economy. He says it's time to put a stop to it. He also begins building a military. He does so by remilitarizing the Rhineland. This is the industrial heartland where all of its factories were that helped Germany build a military in World War I. He decides to rebuild those factories. Now, we have a series of actions on the part of France and Great Britain once Hitler decides to try and expand Germany. This is called appeasement. Now, Hitler wants to rebuild the German Empire and unite the German people. And in 1938, he begins doing so. He says, Austria has a large German population, everybody speaks German, and look, we propose this plan to the Austrians, they say, yes, we want to join Germany. France and Great Britain say, okay, alright, well, if they want it. In 1938, we have the Munich Pact. What's the premise? Hitler wants to annex the Sudetenland. This time, unlike Austria, Czechoslovakia doesn't want to give up the land. Hitler wants to anyways, and he's about to wage war on Czechoslovakia. France and Great Britain come together with Hitler and say, you know what, go ahead, and the Czechs just have to deal with it. Okay, well that sucks for morale for them. By 1939, Czechoslovakia knows that it does not have the backing of France or Great Britain, and then becomes a puppet of Hitler. In 1939, the straw breaks the camel's back. Hitler decides he wants Poland. France and Great Britain say, no, oh, you better not, we'll declare war. Oh, he does. Now, in the invasion of Poland, there are a few things to know about this. Of course, it happens in 1939. Hitler and Stalin, Joseph Stalin of the Soviet Union, sign a secret non-aggression pact where they decide to divide Poland up. Stalin invades from the east, Hitler invades from the west, and they go about it and agree on half for each. Hitler unleashes blitzkrieg, which is lightning warfare. This is fast-moving tanks coupled with massive air support, preventing any kind of stalemates like happened in World War I. Now, Benito Mussolini takes power in Italy in 1922. He creates fascism. This is basically extreme nationalism. He says, you know what, classes, rich and poor, you're all united in your Italian identity. Everyone should sacrifice for the sake of Italy. That turns into sacrifice for whatever I say. If you're not doing what I say, you're not Italian enough. Stop thinking for yourself. Now, he also begins to invade Ethiopia later on. This is part of a larger plan to remake a Roman Empire. Well, why choose Ethiopia? Well, it's the only independent nation. It's weak, and he wants to gain natural resources that are there. He also joins up with Adolf Hitler because they share a lot in common. And, there's a budding romance. 1936, the Rome-Berlin axis is created. This is basically a treaty of friendship. They won't get in each other's way. They will work together. Now, Hideki Tojo takes control of Japan in 1941, but Japan's been on the hunt for natural resources since 1931. Okay, why though? Japan relies on its supply, on trade for its supply of oil, tin, coal, and rubber, everything it needs to make an army. Look at Japan. It's a bunch of islands. They don't have a whole lot of access to natural resources. So they invade China for coal and tin, Southeast Asia for rubber, and Indonesia for oil. Japan knows that it must colonize in order to gain resources. They are tired of being dependent on trade, especially with Western nations like the United States. Speaking of which, the only obstacle to Japan's expansion is the United States. Here's the ideal border of the Japanese Empire. The only thing that's there, that's a problem, is the Philippines, right here, controlled by the United States. The U.S. also has a large military presence in Hawaii. Now, the United States doesn't like what Japan's been doing in China. We place an oil embargo on Japan, choking it of 80% of its oil. The United States also supplies China with its military needs so that it can stay its own country and not be colonized by the Japanese. We also send 100 fighter planes and pilots called the Flying Tigers over there. So the Japanese question is, do we expand or do we submit to the United States? The United States says, you know what, we're going to keep those embargoes on you unless you get out of China. So they decide to continue their expansion, and on December 7th, 1941, they strike at Pearl Harbor. Well, why? The entire U.S. Pacific Fleet is docked at Pearl Harbor. A surprise attack is the only way they can win. They know they can't win a long war. They have to strike quickly, or else the United States, with its vast natural resources, will make a comeback. They do a very good job. They sink lots of ships. The red ships are ones that they completely sunk. Orange means they were heavily damaged, and yellow means they were moderately damaged. They did a very good job. It was their only chance, and they took it. And that's what gets the United States involved in World War II.